So we ended class yesterday with this really interesting idea of um, just like there is ona'ah with mekach v'memkar in business dealings, there's also ona'ah with words. And we had three examples of what this could be. So if you are, and first of all, we translated the original translation of ona'ah was something like being oppressed, being deceived, being tricked. And I wonder if by these examples we would actually extend that definition or make it more specific. So, again, the examples are one. If you walk into a store, you can't ask someone, the store owner, how much does something cost if you know that you're not going to want to buy. Now, basically, you could walk in there and be like, I might buy it. You could walk in there and say, you know what, if the owner, you could actually tell the owner, hey, there are other customers here. Why don't you deal with them first? Because I'm probably not going to buy the item here. I just want to learn more about it. And that owner might say, okay, I will take that risk. I still want to tell you about it, and then you're fine. But if you go in there and knowing I'm gonna figure out what the best one is and buy it from Amazon or buy it from eBay, then you can't do that. The next case is if you weren't religious but you became religious. Um, you can't go up to someone and be like, I remember when you loved to have bacon double cheeseburgers, and you're like, oh, right. You can't do that. So that's also called ona abdvarim, using words to do something to that person. What is it that you're doing? Um, and then the next one is if you actually convert to Judaism, you can't actually say to someone, you know what? You might be Jewish, but I remember things that your parents did I remember things that your relatives did who weren't Jewish. So you can't do that either. So my first question of the day is, what might you actually, how might you define these acts in some way? How might you say that they are, how might you define the word ona'ah, not just trickery or deception or oppression, because these aren't necessarily, maybe the first one's trickery, right, or deception, you're deceiving, but the other two are not necessarily deceiving. You're not deceiving this person who's religious. You're doing something else to them. What actually are you doing to them? That's question number one. And two is, how would you expand the definition of ona'ah? That would be question number two. All right, so this book is called the Kitzur Shulchan Aruch, and actually right in back of me is the Shulchan Aruch. What is the Shulchan Aruch? The Shulchan Aruch is a book of laws, because I think I told you earlier that the Talmud isn't going to tell us laws. It's going to have a lot of conversations, a lot of back and forth, but at the end of the day, you might leave frustrated and ask the question, what actually is the law? What am I actually supposed to do? Well, other rabbis who studied the Talmud basically said, I'm going to figure out the law and tell you what the law is and make it easy that you can look up the law without having to read the entire discussion. So the Shulchan Aruch is one version of that for Jews that are considered themselves Ashkenazi, meaning born from the Ashkenaz area, from around the German Rhineland area. Then there's another one for Jews from Spain and from the Middle East, and that is the Mishnah Torah written by the Rambam. And both the Shulchan Aruch and the Mishnah Torah basically do the same thing. They kind of provide you with the bottom line. This book right here is called the Kitzur Shulchan Aruch. Kitzur is like shortened form. So if you wanted to look up in a short and easy way, you would look in the Kitzur Shulchan Aruch by Rabbi Shlomo Gansfried. And I looked in that book on ona'ah, and he gave three different ideas of what ona'ah might look like, four different situations of ona'ah. So the first is ona'ah with a dinner party. How might there be ona'ah? This is your question number three. Ona'ah in a dinner party. Okay, question number four is, how might a teacher show ona'ah? So let me first of all give you an answer for question number one, see if you got it right. So ona'ah for a dinner party would be inviting someone to a dinner party when you specifically know that they cannot come. Why would that, what would that do for you? What would it do for the person? And why would that be considered ona'ah? Number four, how might a teacher become guilty of ona'ah? Okay, and so what's your answer to that for number four? And then the answer that actually I think even Xavier said in class was, if a teacher knows that you don't know the answer, deliberately calling on you, like if she sees that you weren't paying attention, so calling on you, that teacher would be guilty of ona'ah bidvarim. What about a kosher butcher? How might they be guilty of ona'ah dvarim? What could they say that would make them guilty of ona'ah? That's question number 5. Right? They might say something is at a standard of kashrut that someone who is very finicky might say, "Oh yeah, I can eat there," and then actually their standard is much less. So, I mean, they were kosher, but they're not maybe kosher to a certain level. And what about number 6? How might someone be show ona'ah in giving a gift? That seems like such a positive thing, right? How would you say that? And the answer, at least that Shlomo Gansfried gives is, if you know that someone doesn't like something, you know that someone is going to say no to that gift, you can't give them a gift. So if I know, Kate, that you hate bananas, and I come up to you and say, here is a bushel of bananas. I bought them just for you, the very best quality. And I know in my head, she hates bananas. She's not gonna want that. But I'm going to get credit for having wanted to buy her something and give her a gift. So I'm thought of as all thoughtful. But in my head, I knew that she wasn't going to say yes to it. That's also ona'ah. So again, can you give me, from knowing the 3 examples from our Mishnah and the 1 example and the 4 examples here, what is your kind of working definition of ona'ah? And we'll call that's going to be question number 7. All right. Now we're going to move on. And now question number 8 is, make a hypothesis. If you know that this is the Mishnah dealing with ona'ah bidvarim that comes right before the story we're going to talk about, what is your sense? What is your hypothesis about the story that we're going to actually right now be studying? Okay, that's your question number 8. Okay, so let's move on. There's one final thing you need to know, a bit of pre-knowledge. So I told you about what Mishnah this story is connected to. Now I want to show you about the story itself. Now, first of all, this story starts with an argument, which in Hebrew, by the way, is the word machloket. Machloket, meaning there are 2 sides of an argument. Machloket, okay? And the 2 sides of the argument have to deal with this kind of oven right here. And the question is this oven pure or impure? Now, purity and impurity, or the word tameh or tahor, tameh is impure, tahor is pure. Those are really important terms back in the time of when the Torah was written and the Mishnah was around. Not so important today. We almost never hear about being pure or impure, except for one certain part of Judaism. But we only hear of But back in the day, it was really important. Why was it really important? Because back in the day of the Mishnah, there was no such thing as a synagogue, right? There was this one place called the Beit HaMikdash, or God's temple, and that's where all prayers happened. And prayer wasn't prayer. Prayer was basically coming to the temple, giving a sacrifice, and eating parts of that sacrifice, giving part of that meat to the workers of the temple, and you yourself eating it yourself. That was what worship was. There was nothing else. There was no praying 3 times a day, which Jews do today. There was just worship. So there was just sacrificing and eating some of that sacrifice. So what is the rule about impurity? Well, if you're impure, you may not eat that food. And if you work in the temple and you're impure, you may not be a worker in the temple while you are impure. Now, luckily, there are ways to become pure if you are impure. Way number 1 is to wait 7 days and then jump in a body of water or a ritual bath called a mikveh. And so for smaller levels of impurity, you just wait 1 day and then you go into this a ritual bath at night. Those are ways, if you're impure, to become pure. One other way was being sprinkled with ashes of a para aduma, of a red cow, basically a cow that was entirely brown. They were very rare, but the ashes of that in some way made you pure. But interesting enough, it made the person who was sprinkling you impure. So it's a weird paradox in a way. Okay, but how can you become impure? Well, you become impure when things that are icky kind of touch you in some way. So what are examples of things that are icky, right? So anything that oozes from the body, anything that oozes from sexual organs in the body would be considered, oh, if I touch that stuff, I am going to become impure. If I touch a dead body, I'm going to become impure. If I touch a dead animal that 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 died in some kind of weird way, I am automatically impure. So those are a lot of things that make you impure. So why do I mention all this? Because that's exactly this oven, the machloket. The argument about this oven is going to be whether it is pure or impure. Because here's what we need to know. So here, this oven, this tanur shel achnai, or the oven of achnai, is tahor, right? Because nothing bad has touched it or come in contact with it. But now all of a sudden, it is made impure. It is tameh because something has happened to it that makes it impure. So what do we do now? How do we make this oven tahor again? How do we make a tameh oven of aknai a tahor oven of aknai? Well, that's impossible. There's no way to make a clay oven that's become impure pure again. No, actually, there is a way, right? The only way you can make it pure is by breaking it. And when you break it, it loses its status of impurity. But the question that they're going to ask is, what if after I break it, I put it back together again? What if I use some kind of cement, some kind of sandy cement to put it back together again? So I broke it, but I put it back together. Well, if you break it, it loses its impurity. But what if you put it back together? Does it get the original impurity or has it lost it for good? So, by the way, so that question number 10 is, what would be your answer? Would you say this oven that is kind of has been broken, but it's been placed back together, so now it's functional, is actually an oven that you can use and it's completely tahor, or do you believe it is tameh? All right. Well, it just so happens that that is the argument. Now, but by the way, let me just say that I might be wrong. That actually the argument might not actually be about whether this oven is pure or impure, but rather could it become pure or could it become impure when it is kind of put back together? Does it have the status of something that might one day become impure again? Or is it the status of something that can never, ever, ever be impure? Why is that? Because there are some things that can never be impure. I actually have it in the office, right? Utensils that can't become impure um, are unfinished vessels or utensils. So maybe this is an unfinished vessel or utensil. Is it fixed? Something that's totally fixed to the ground? Maybe this is totally fixed to the ground. Is it too large to be moved? Maybe too large to be moved. Is it made of? Is it made of stone? And I guess yes or no. So either they're arguing about the actual right now status of this oven, if it is pure or impure, or they're arguing, could this oven, how it stands right now, in the future ever become impure or ever become pure? Those are the two possibilities, what we're talking about. But it really doesn't matter because all we really need to know is that there was an argument between Rabbi Eliezer and all of the other rabbis, Rabbi Eliezer and everyone else. And that's where our story begins. And our story can begin as a play, right? It's kind of a play and we kind of acted it out. So what I'd like you to do is kind of read over the story. Um, read over the story, or we can kind of look at it. We can look at it together. Okay, here we go. It was taught on that day. Rabbi Eliezer brought out every possible argument, trying to show that he was correct. But the other rabbis did not accept the argument. Rabbi Eliezer said, "If the law is the way I say it is, if the halacha, which is law, is the way I say it is, this carob tree will move from over there to over here." The carob tree was uprooted and moved 100 cubits from its place. Some people even say the carob tree moved 400 feet. There it is. Carob tree is on the move. Next, the rabbi said, just because a carob tree magically moves 100 cubits from its place, this does not prove, Rabbi Eliezer, that you are correct. Rabbi Eliezer came back and said to the rabbis, if the law is the way I say it is, if the halakha is the way I say it is, then this stream of water will prove it by reversing and flowing upstream. And lo and behold, the stream of water reversed and began to flow upstream. That. All right. And the rabbi said, just because a stream that normally moves downstream is now moving upstream, this does not prove that you are correct. Okay, Rabbi Eliezer is now getting a bit frustrated. He says, if the law is the way I say it is, if the halacha is the way I say it is, then let the walls of the Beit Midrash study house prove it. Whoa. And the walls would have crushed the rabbis had not Rabbi Joshua yelled at them and said, if students of Torah are engaged in halachic dispute, if students of Torah are engaged in an argument over Jewish law, what right do you have to interfere? By the way, question number 11 is, what are they describing? Who is the you? Is the you the walls? Is the you God? Who's the you that we're preferring? Like, are we saying God is behind these miracles, or is the you just the walls actually that have become? Okay. Narrated 2. Out of respect for Rabbi Joshua, the walls stopped from crushing the rabbis, but out of respect to Rabbi Eliezer, the walls did not move back to their original place. If you go to the study hall where this argument took place today, you can see that the walls remain this way today. So it's probably like a tourist trap today, right? Probably a gift shop there as well. Narrator number 1. Rabbi Eliezer turned to the rabbis and said, if the halacha agrees with me, if the law agrees with me, then let the voice of God, which in Hebrew is abat kol, cry out and declare that I am correct. And sure enough, the voice of God cried out from heaven, saying, why are you all arguing? Don't you realize that in all matters of Jewish law, Rabbi Eliezer is always correct? Then Rabbi Joshua stood up and cried out, it is not in heaven. Lo bashamayim he. Right, there it is. Lo bashamayim he. What did he mean by that? What did he mean by that? Rabbi Jeremiah said, I'll tell you what Rabbi Joshua means by that. He means that the Torah was already given at Mount Sinai. Therefore, we no longer pay attention to a bat kol, a heavenly voice, because God wrote in the Torah, in cases of law, we follow the majority. Here it is right here. In Shemot 23:5, it says, Acharei rabim lahatot. After the majority, you should lean. A bit later, Rabbi Natan came across Elijah the prophet, who has spent time hanging out in heaven, and asked him, by the way, my question number 12 is, why of all people might it be possible that Rabbi Natan is able to contact Elijah? Okay, you're going to have to do some outside research to figure that out. Okay, and I'm definitely checking this question, so you got to look it up. There is a reason why it's possible, theoretically possible, not only for Rabbi Natan, but even us to contact Elijah, whereas all the other rabbis, we couldn't, right? That's your little hint. Rabbi Natan says, hey, Elijah, since you live up in heaven, maybe you can answer a question for me. Here it is. At that very moment that Rabbi Joshua said the words, it is not in heaven, how did God react? Elijah, right after Rabbi Joshua told God that man should not listen to God anymore, God laughed and he said, my children have defeated me. My children have defeated me. All right. That is, I must say, this is probably the most famous story in all of the Talmud. So it's fitting, very fitting. This is the very first one that we study for the year. And that's the story in play form. Now I'm going to show you the actual piece of the Talmud. Here it is all in Hebrew. And here I've circled up above. I circled the page that it's on. Well, first of all, look, it's from Masechet Bava Metzia here. It's in the fourth chapter that starts with the word Hazahav. But look at this. It's page Nun Tet, which is 59, and the two dots mean not A, but B. Okay. Now what I've done, and I've placed this also in the assignment box for your assignments for the weekend instead of a video, you'll see that I divided the text up into 21 different pieces. And what I'd like you to do is, for each, I would like you to kind of number from 1 to 21. And I'd like you to do a close reading as if you were kind of in an English class, like looking at these texts. And I think I put kind of the questions I want you to consider. I put those in the assignment column for the week as well. And what I want you to consider is, right, what questions do you have about this sentence? What makes you curious about this sentence? What is it? What? And I have two other questions I asked you. So basically, you're going through for your homework each one of these sentences of the story, and you're you're wondering what it's about, what it's trying to say, why is it saying what it says, why is it doing. Okay, that's it. Good luck with everything, and see your class on Tuesday. This is kind of your you'll get quiz credit for having completed this, so I'll go around and check.